This is Ryan Poley. Welcome to the How Did I Get Here podcast. This is a conversation I had with Brian Baxter from the Catbird Seat restaurant in Nashville.
Brian Baxter, thanks for hanging out with us today. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. You're somebody that I think has a very interesting story, and there's a lot of things that I want to talk to you about today. But mainly on the How Did We Get Here podcast. So I kind of just want to start out by, how did you start cooking? What age were you? What drew you to it? And then let's just start there.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, trying to think back a little bit in high school. Yeah, I originally thought I wanted to be a pediatrician. Wanted to play football. So that was kind of the goal. And I, like 8th, 9th grade, you don't really know what you want to do. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna be a pediatrician. I wasn't smart enough to do that, so thankfully I didn't do that. But yeah, probably sophomore year of high school, started watching a ton of Emerald Live. Well, I would get home, I was supposed to be doing homework, and I'd just be like eating a snack and watching Emerald Live.
What year was this?
So this would have been 2001.
In the heyday of Emerald.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was so great, man. Yeah.
Legend.
I used
Love
to
the
watch
guy.
him all the time. Like,
Yeah.
I met him one time and I was just like, I geeked out. Like, you have no idea what you meant to me, man. It was like the only cooking show besides like Julia Childs. And like, and I was like, dude, I ordered the essence of Emerald, the spice that he had from the Food Network, sent to the house. Yeah.
So, that's 2001, and like it's interesting to me. It might even have been like a little bit my freshman year, but food TV was pretty new on the internet back then. When I think we still had dial-up and
for sure, yeah, absolutely.
So like after all the crunchies, finally you get on there and you get on. I'm just like now picturing my dad's computer in the search engine. It was so bad, but I'd print up recipes and start playing with them. Well, my grandmother, we moved in with her when I was 10. And she did most of the cooking. Like, my mom did a lot when I was a child, but I was the only child till I was 10 years old. And then we had my sister Rebecca, and then 17 years later,
wow,
my parents had my youngest sister Rachel. So there's a big gap there. But once we had moved in with her, she does most of the cooking. As she gets older, it gets blander and blander. So I start kind of like wanting to cook and play around, but I would leave such a mess in the kitchen that she, I don't know what I was doing. She would get mad if I cooked. So my other grandma didn't live too far away. So she would give me like her checkbook to go up to Albertsons or Publix, and I would get something and come back.
Where were you living? Where was this at the time?
It was all in St. Petersburg.
Okay. That's where you grew up. That's where you grew up. Yeah.
Yep. So I didn't learn a lot back then. I did learn working with habaneros the first time. I was doing some stuff, and then I went to the bathroom.
Went to the bathroom.
Yeah,
everyone's life
brutal.
lesson.
Yeah.
But you were interested in it. Why do you think you were curious about it? Because thinking like you wanted to be a pediatrician, and obviously you were an athlete, football. I mean, the correlation that I can see between those two is like you wanting to help people, nurture people. For me and a lot of other people, or a lot of other chefs I talk to, it's, if I wasn't cooking, I'd be doing something with my hands. I would have been a mechanic. I would have been a woodworker, an electrician. I think that those kind of trade, I would have definitely done some sort of trade because school wasn't for me.
Right.
So why do you think drew you to cooking?
I don't really know. Now I think it's the creativity. And back then I didn't know. I also would watch, do you remember Dinner and a Movie on TBS?
Of course, yeah.
So great. I still, first time, a lot of movies I saw for the first time watching Dinner and Movie, but I tried not to miss it if it wasn't football season. The original Iron Chef, didn't miss an episode. So I just think, just kind of fell in love with it. So if I wasn't watching, game film, which I would watch every night, I was watching, something food-related.
Right. Do you think you're the type of person that the creativity was kind of in your subconscious, and unknowingly you were being drawn to it because of your subconscious, and if it wasn't cooking, there would have been another form of creative outlet in the arts that would have drawn you to something?
I think so, possibly.
Yeah, right.
Because, I did like drawing as a kid. I was always trying to create something, I was by myself for the first 10 years of my life, so, I would find ways when I was home playing to be creative. I remember I had was it the Talk Boy? What did Macaulay Culkin have in Home Alone 2?
Oh, like the CB radios?
Yeah, I would record like little episodes with my G.I. Joes and Ninja Turtles and like narrate them. So, I definitely was drawn to, I think, just some kind of creativity or art, whether you want to call it that or not.
Right.
When I was younger, my mom said, I don't remember doing this, but, like would just mix stuff together and be like, hey, look at what I created.
Right.
Try, eat this. And it would be like flour and, food coloring.
Yeah.
I think, probably the first thing I ever cooked, I was watching Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Oh, man. Legend.
And they were talking about movie glass, which is just sugar.
Like sugar, yeah.
So we lived 2 blocks from the grocery store, and I don't know how old I was, but she's like, I'm going to run to the grocery store. I'll be back in 10 minutes. I was like, all right, yeah, cool. So I was just watching TV, and hey, you learn how to make movie glass so you can break a bottle over something. And I was like, I can do this.
Yeah.
So I started gathering all this stuff. Make a caramel. I burn sugar.
Yeah, so basically, explain what movie glass is. It's a sugar and water, more or less. Yeah.
It's caramel.
Yeah.
So if you're going to make like a dark one, like a bottle, it's, just sugar cooked to a certain point and allowed to cool.
Yeah.
But they obviously have molds and stuff. So I did it in a pan. Dude, thankfully I didn't touch it. We all know how bad sugar burns are. I let it cool, and then, I'm just breaking it in this pan. My mom comes home, and all she smells is like burnt sugar.
Yeah, right.
And she's like, "What's it?" So that's probably the first thing I ever cooked. First time I burned sugar.
So you're in sophomore year of high school. You're living with your grandmother, watching Food Network.
Mm-hmm.
What was the next step? So you went to culinary school. You graduated high school. What happened?
So I graduated high school. I went to I played football my freshman year of high school or college in Montgomery, West Virginia, Division II school called West Virginia Tech. So they had it was part of West Virginia University, but also they had an additional little like tech campus. That was like a certificate campus. So they had a culinary program. Once you graduate, so I would have had to go to school for business management, get my culinary certificate separately, and then they send you to work at the Greenbrier.
Oh, the Greenbrier's legend, man.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So that was the plan. I was young, moved with a girlfriend. There were some changes and things that happened. Like, not all the coaches were there when we got there, and now the program's no longer there. They've moved to school.
Wow.
So it was like they were already trying to get rid of the football program at the time. So it was just kind of like, it wasn't the right fit. So moved back home, transferred to a school called Weber International, which is in Babson Park, Florida. So like, I guess kind of northeast of Lakeland, maybe. It's like back in the orange groves. They had a football team and they had a hospitality program. So I was just going to do hospitality management and then go to culinary school after that. But I just wasn't super happy there. I was driving to Orlando to be with my friends every night. It was like an hour every day, every morning, drive back for practice, So I applied.
Even at like 20, that's a grind.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I applied to culinary school, the CIA. Didn't hear back. So then I applied at Le Cordon Bleu because I had a friend that was hung out with all my other friends in Orlando. I was like, oh, you should just go there. Well, of course, they're like, well, if you don't start next block, we don't know if we can get you in. So, like, I'm getting dressed for practice one day, and I'm like, what do I do?
Right.
I'm not going to play in the NFL.
Yeah.
Like, this is...
Well, at least you had that realization. I feel like there's a lot of guys in high school and college that are like, I'm going to be the world's greatest pitcher. And he's like 5'3", can't even throw a fastball.
74 miles per hour.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So that was probably the toughest decision I ever made. I mean, pretty sure I walked back to my dorm room with all my pads. I left all my clothes hanging in the locker. packed up most of my stuff, left the rest.
Right. I mean, that's a tough realization. So you figured that out. You just knew that you weren't going to play.
Yeah.
So what was the pivot then? Was I'm going to double down on culinary school then?
I just dropped out of school. Dropped out of Weber. And
now, were you cooking in restaurants? Did you have a job in a restaurant? Yeah.
So, in high school, I had not cooked, but they would let me. The only thing they would let me do was be like a back waiter.
Mm-hmm.
So, my junior and senior year, I worked at a restaurant called the Wine Cellar a little bit, which we could jump into.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when you get there.
I'm almost there. So. Anyways, started Le Cordon Bleu there for about 7-8 weeks, and then I get my acceptance letter to the CIA, and I wanted to be up north. I had looked at school in Minnesota and West Virginia and decided on West Virginia because I wanted seasons. I didn't want super cold.
Yeah, and humid.
So I get the acceptance letter, and I was like, screw it. This is what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I dropped out of Le Cordon Bleu. Before I could go to CIA, and I needed 6 months of experience in a kitchen at the time. I don't know if they still require that.
That's a good question. I doubt it.
Probably not.
Yeah.
So I went.
I think they'll take anybody right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of what it's becoming. So reached back out to the chef at the restaurant I was working at, the Wine Cellar, and he's like, "Yeah, come on." So I would go in the mornings, and so it was a old school restaurant, but it had a banquet room attached to it, and they did a ton of catering offsite. So every day we'd come in, I'd help. If we, during banquet season, just help prep all the banquet stuff. So it was just me working with him. So I feel like I learned a bit about organization there. Definitely, yeah. But you never knew what kind of day it was going to be until you looked in, there's a 5-gallon bucket under the station, and how many Michelob Ultras were in there. It's 7 or 8 in the morning.
Yeah.
It's going to be one of those days.
Right.
He's an intense dude. I mean, he's a nice dude. He never yelled at you, but he was just super intense.
Yeah. Did you ever work at a country club?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so I feel like country clubs I worked at them when I was early on. It's the same thing. It's like you show up and you don't know what kind of day it's going to be. There's a golf outing going on. There's a wedding. There's regular service. There's lunch service. There's the guys at the bar in the 19th hole ordering sandwiches while you're trying to cook shrimp linguine and trying to cut a wedding cake. It's just pure chaos, man.
Yeah.
But the things that I think you learn in those environments kind of set you up.
Right.
You can kind of just handle anything,
Yeah, exactly. So it was fun. There were a couple times where they let me get on the line a little bit, and I didn't do any more. I'm telling you, the place was old school. Steamed rice, or maybe it was rice pilaf.
With ice cream scoop?
Well, no, we had the ceramic soup.
Ceramic soup.
So you pack it in there, and then you unmold it, and then you fan out the vegetables.
Right, yeah.
But
we should bring that back. We should bring that back.
I might bring it back this week. I don't know. But, I mean, Chateaubriand tableside, rack lamb tableside, Dover sole tableside.
Fucking dope.
So cool.
Yeah.
Baked Alaska. They did tomato rose garnish for the shrimp scampi, chicken piccata, veal piccata with the caper with the anchovy wrapped around it and the lemon. I mean, it's so tight.
Dude,
it's just old
so
school.
good, man. So
and then
good.
every Monday was the continental buffet where you used all the leftovers.
Sure, yep.
It was incredible. I mean, it was good. They were smart. They were good at saving money. They would take all the bread that came back from the tables. It would get doused. It went into this bin next to the dish pit. It was bread only. It would get doused with lemon juice and then dried in the oven, for 12 hours.
Yeah.
And then they never bought breadcrumbs.
Yeah. John Bonchet, when I worked at La Francais, all the leftover wine that came back, there was a huge container of white and red. And no matter if someone was drinking out of it or it was a bottle, everything got dumped in there. And the next morning, it'd be reducing to make sauce.
Amazing.
And we'd be like, out of the bottle is cool.
Yeah.
But there'd be lipstick rings on a fucking glass. You'd be like, holy shit. And then you taste the sauce. You're like, this is the most amazing sauce.
There's something to it.
But, I know.
It's all the saliva.
But I know that we shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah. 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 So it was some things like that. It was kind of funny to see. But those the two chefs who started it were old school, from Germany.
Yeah.
But it's just like cool to see stuff like that because you don't. I guess it's starting to come back now, right? But on the old school like classic service where like the servers had been there 30, 40 years and half of them were German,
right?
And just watching them do the stuff.
Yeah,
like so
I guess you see it at places like Lake Huku and like Carbone, maybe a couple other French places, but I feel like you're going there and it's going to be this production,
right?
As opposed to that period of time, that's just all we knew, And if a restaurant, like a trendy casual restaurant that's opening now, opened back and then, in that time, you'd be like, "Where's the service? There's no hospitality. Like,
right?
What the fuck is this, man?"
Oh yeah, exactly.
Share plates. Whatever you meant to share everything, people's heads would explode.
Oh yeah,
what are you talking? Doubt. Share. I want my entree. Well, we don't really do that here.
Yeah,
it's five to six plates per person.
Well, the those early bird people would show up and their heads would explode.
Right.
They knew what they wanted.
So you're in there doing banquets. You're
catering,
tableside, Dover Souls, all of it.
Yeah, super cool. Did a lot of kosher caterings too. So it was like kind of cool to see the whole place covered in foil, and you kind of see that whole
rabbi
process.
Walking around blessing things for no reason.
Yeah. So head to CIA. Of course, I moved there. My block started February.
Yeah. This was like 03, 04 probably?
No, so it would have been 06. So I graduated high school in 04. I think it was 2000. Yeah, it would have been 2006. We're supposed to fly up a day. Flight gets canceled because like the most snow that Central Park's gotten in history, and so like I move in the dead of winter, but I love it. And there's just something about walking around CIA when it's like 20 degrees out and all you can smell is veal stock at like 6 in the morning.
Absolutely.
It's like I thought it was pretty special, but I learned a lot there. I don't regret going, like it's expensive, but I feel like I learned the foundation. I think it depends on the person. Like some people don't need to go to culinary school. I wanted to get a degree because I felt like I owed it to my parents to get some sort of degree. And I also like wanted to have something. I originally was going to do a bachelor's, decided not to do that, but it was. I learned a lot of foundational things there that I still use today, even if it's far from classic. But no regrets as far as that goes.
Overall, great experience. I think it's a different school now. Well, it's also a different time period,
No doubt.
Yeah. So you went on they make you do an internship.
Yep. So my internship was at a restaurant called Beacon in New York. So the chef Waldy Malouf, he's pretty old school. Like he came up around the same time as a lot of like the classic chefs in New York. So like David Boulay. I'm pretty sure they all worked together at was it Le Cote Basque or one of those classic French. And the guys that worked under them as line cooks.
Or Lettuce. A lot of them came from Lettuce also.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like David Burke and all these guys, So he went through the list one time.
How'd you find Wally then? Out of all the restaurants in New York City you could have been to?
So, I got married when I was 20. So my ex-wife's uncle was the manager of K-Rock. So K-Rock's building is exactly opposite of behind Beacon on 57th. Beacon was on 56th. So he would eat lunch there all the time. So they were friends. While we were still in West Virginia, we went up and visited for her cousin's wedding, and they had it at Beacon. So that was the first time
you were exposed to it. Then.
Yeah, and I was like, "Whoa, this is a New York restaurant. It's so sick." So anyways, like Tom and Penny, his wife, got me an interview with them, and I went down, and then both Waldy and then the CDC chef Mike had gone to CIA as well.
So they knew the deal, yeah, right.
So like I get there my first day, and I got my packet, and it's like, you're gonna work all these stations. This is what the CIA wants you to work, all these stations. The chef's gonna do this, and this, and you go in, and you're like, yeah, They're like, okay, cool. So you think you're going to start at prep or garde, and they're like, yeah, so one of our guys just quit, so there's only 3. So you're going to work with Nick today because you're going to be on saute tomorrow.
You're on the broiler. It's 1,400 degrees over there.
Cool. So I mean, I was like completely thrown into the fire, and I think it's probably the best thing that could happen.
No other way to learn. Absolutely.
I think about it now, like they probably thought I was such a pussy, but
right.
There were things that I did. It's just like, I get it, like it's your first time being exposed to that. Thankfully, from playing football for so long, and like my dad was pretty tough on me. Like if I wasn't throwing up,
right, or
like looked like I was dead, I had to go to school,
right?
Because if you don't go to school, you can't play, and he just didn't. So, I pushed through, and it was tough because I was living in Poughkeepsie still. So like every morning I commuted. It's like a 2-hour and 20-minute train ride. So I would catch the express at like 6:30 to be there in time. You work doubles 5 or 6 days a week,
right?
Because that was the staff. You work doubles every day, and then you get home. I tried like if I didn't get to the train by 2:20 or whatever it was at night, like I'd have to spend the night at someone in town's apartment.
If somebody asked me to do that now, I'd be like, "Are you fucking crazy?"
Yeah,
like,
I know.
Maybe I work 1 double a week. I'd be like, "This is nonsense. I'm not doing this.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought this was America."
Yeah. But that, that was the grind.
But all the students were doing it.
Well,
basically, pretty much, right?
I don't know, maybe not. Because it's an externship. So for 6 months or whatever it is, you leave and then you eventually come back.
Yeah.
I was married, so we had an apartment.
I see. But I feel like those early experiences, you're grinding away, man. Like I was driving all around the Chicagoland area, hours in the fucking car to get from this, College DuPage was a, what do they call that? A junior college.
Okay.
I wanted to get an associate's degree. My parents were really hot on it because they didn't know what the fuck a culinary art was. And I'm like, I want to be a chef. And they're like, what? I would like drive out to the suburbs and I'd drive all the way back to the south side. I'd spend 5 hours in the car in traffic, falling asleep at the wheel to wake up in the morning and go back to the baking class. Like, I feel like that's a rite of passage for someone in school or someone working 2 jobs or just taking whatever job you can because they let you cook, as opposed to this other job where you're going to be peeling potatoes all day or whatever.
Right.
I'm on the line here. It's like, all right, I'll drive the extra hour because it's a reputable place or the chef's great,
Yeah.
So you obviously had that experience too.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think it's important because you push your body to, it's like training camp or like 2-a-days or 3-a-days. You push your body to a limit that you don't think it's capable of getting to. And once you get there, it's like, oh, I can, it's not, it sucks at the time, but when you're not working that much, it makes your life seem so easy.
We don't have
like
that much
60
responsibility.
hours?
We don't have any responsibilities too.
55 hours? That's pretty
I feel
cool.
like we conditioned our bodies at those first 3 restaurant jobs we had to like set us up for the long hours anyway.
Right.
And now it's like, if you work a 10-hour day, you're like, oh, fuck, a 10-hour day? It's a half day today.
Yeah,
what am I going to do
exactly.
with all this time on my hands?
All this
now?
extra time.
Yeah. Oh, I'm at home at 8:30 at night. Like, let's go to dinner. Like, this is amazing.
It's always weird if you work like a morning shift and you get out and the sun's at a certain level you're not used to seeing it at. It's like the air smells different at this time.
It just looks different.
Yeah.
It's a different feeling.
Yeah,
it's like, this is what normal people do.
Yeah.
Sometimes every once in a while we'll get like that random Saturday off and I won't think. I'll just be like, it's Saturday. Let's go to dinner. Oh, there's a 2-hour wait. Like,
yeah.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, I gotta plan this.
It's Saturday. Of course there's a 2-hour wait.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how was the experience with Wally then?
It was good, man.
And it was you just did an internship there for
I just did
3 months
I can't remember what it was, 6 months or God, time flew. It was good though. I lost 25 pounds and I didn't sleep.
Yeah.
Which was good for me.
Barely eating too.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Because you're only eating at CIA. It's like, but I learned a lot more about like speed and efficiency and just like grinding. I feel it's funny now because as you get older, you see things and you kind of think back. You're like, oh yeah, where maybe I have a sous chef that like will get on to someone about like a bad family meal.
Yeah.
And you're like, the kid's just trying to get by.
Right.
Like, of course he made a bad family meal, but when I think of myself, I made a lot of bad family meals at that job because I was like, you're running, constantly running to like, just to be ready
get
for
to the
both
finish,
services.
Get to the finish line, and
Yeah,
the finish line is the service.
Yeah, I still have a whole other service to do. It's just brunch.
It's like another 5 hours to do. Like, oh, finally here, I made a station set up. It's like great. And from the frying pan to the fight. Now we got to do the service. You're like, fuck.
Yeah, I thought I was done.
Yeah,
and the services there were busy. They were hard. They're not. It's not like a.
So do you think that it's perspective? Like sometimes I think my mind looks back and I want to remember things a certain way. Like I made shitty staff meals, but maybe I kind of block that out. Or sometimes when I look at the younger cooks, it's kind of, I understand what they're going through, but the perspective that I have is here, is where I'm at now. And I can't put myself, all I see is this is a shit staff meal. And now we're all starving and we have to order pizzas at the fucking break, at 9:00 because we're starving. Like, I think I have a hard time with perspective. Like, do you think your mind plays tricks on you of how you remembered things or how good a situation was or how bad it was?
I don't know. I think maybe we just block certain situations, like you're saying.
Yeah.
But I don't have any like I understand it and I know why you're doing what you're doing, but I don't really have sympathy for it.
Yeah. Correct.
You know, like you still have a job. You signed up for the job.
Yeah.
You do the job.
Dude,
Figure it out.
I understand exactly where you're from, but you know what? Tough shit, man.
Yeah. Like we've been through. Everybody's been through it.
Yes.
It's like you said, a rite of passage earlier, so, I don't really have sympathy for it, like maybe, I think if anything, and this is just from years of managing, like dealing with people differently than I used to when I first.
Yeah. That's experience though. It's experience. I think it comes with age. Like I used to be a psychopath and now I'm embarrassed at the way I used to run things. And then I made a choice in like 2010. I was like, I'm going to be better about this. But I was still like, I was doing good. And then something would like trigger me and I'd be like, rah, Yeah. And now it's also the climate of the employees that we're getting. It's, you're forced to change.
Right.
I know a lot of chefs that, used to be a certain way, very militant. And even they're like, we can't do this anymore. They're bringing on consultants of how to speak to people and how to manage the business better. So I actually think that's a kind of a good thing that's happening in the business. Like, it's
okay every once in a while.
It's okay with like let them know. It's like, oh shit, this guy's pissed. You know, not to sidetrack. 'Cause I want to get back to that. But how has your management style changed in the last 5 years? Would you say like what things have you implemented? Where like, okay, we obviously can't do this anymore.
Well, throwing stuff, not necessarily at people, but at things, which it happens every once in a while. But hitting things, like just completely losing it.
Yeah.
Which got easier when I quit drinking, which we'll get to later.
Right.
I've calmed down a bit as I've had 2 kids. They test me a lot too, so it's like I don't know, trying to just be more patient, which I struggle with just in general. But there are there's still times where now like my sous chef has worked for me he worked for me at Husk and he has been here since June. Another one of our guys came from Millennia.
They know the deal.
They've been through either how I am or how someone else
is right
was maybe worse than I was.
Right.
So it's not that difficult, and they know it's expected. I think it's the younger guys that come in that don't know what to expect, and like I expect those guys to handle situations with those younger guys before I have to.
Right.
Because if I have to, then that means either you missed it as a sous chef, which is an issue, or you're not listening to a sous chef,
right,
which is also an issue.
Or it's a bigger problem that you got to get the boss involved.
Right.
Yeah.
So then that's when, but Catbird is different.
It's an anomaly of a restaurant.
It's not a 30 staff.
Yeah, it's an anomaly of a restaurant. Everybody's position, no matter what they're doing in that restaurant, is so important because if they're not there, that's 5 things that aren't getting done.
Right.
So it's a weird anomaly of a restaurant. So How was Wally's management style? So we're talking back in mid 2000s, classically trained chef, worked with some big dogs.
Well, Mike was the executive chef. He was, I don't know, CDC.
Yeah.
He was so towering, dude. Dude's a giant. But he was he was intense, and he would get on you, but he was pretty, unless you really messed up, he was he was pretty good. Waldy, you knew when he was there, it's just the energy, the chef brings.
Yeah, everybody's butthole got a little tighter.
Yeah, and only one time did he really yell at me because I was so busy, and we used Fiend's Herb a lot for garnish back then, and sprinkled, whatever it was,
yeah,
finish
plate,
it. And he's like, give me the herbs, and I was trying to do something. And I turned around, I grabbed the ninth pin, and I just turn and try to toss it up onto the pass, which was elevated, and it tipped over and spilled Fiend's Herb all over the pass. And he just goes, hey! And he kind of sounded like Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah.
He's like, you're lucky he's either said you're lucky I'm in a good mood or have changed, or else I would have thrown this right at your head.
Fucking hell.
So he was he was already older. I mean, he was in his 50s when I worked for him, so he had already calmed down a lot. You know? But I can only imagine.
Jesus. Yeah. Him in his 20s.
Yeah.
Oof. So what? You finished there. You finished your internship. You graduated college. You finished CIA.
Yep.
And then where'd you go?
So like I said, I was married at the time. She wanted to move back to Florida. So we moved back to Orlando. I'm going to go to University of Central Florida. They have the Rosen Hospitality School. Finish my bachelor's.
Yeah, right.
Applied to a bunch of restaurants there. Applied to a Norman Van Aken's restaurant at the Ritz. I went through all the interview processes and then must have failed the last one. I don't know. Where it's you see a single mom take a can from the dry storage. Do you tell her to put it back? Do you tell on her?
On, man.
And I was
really?
I don't. And maybe the other thing was tell her not to do it again. But I don't remember.
No comment. I just left it blank.
I was I don't know. And then
that's a trick question.
I know.
I mean, come on, guys.
So then I also applied at a restaurant called Blue Zoo, which is at the Swan and Dolphin Resort. So it was a Todd English restaurant. He was down there a few times a year, especially for the events and stuff. And when he would come film at Home Shopping Network. But the chef's name was Chris Windus, and I applied there a couple times because it was on the job search. So eventually they get back to me and all right, come in for an interview. So I finally go in, pass the interview, and you go through all the orientation and all that stuff. And usually there you would start, they had raw bar, which is where you started. Then they had you went raw bar to cold apps, hot apps, and then the pizza oven. Yeah. And they're we're going to start you on fish. Or they called it the Teppin station. It was a teppanyaki grill.
Yes.
Todd was really into searing most of the fish on there. When I think back now of so this restaurant's 500 covers a night,
Jesus.
So you're
Christ,
resting
man.
fish, finding places to so you have you have a salamander and you have this grill, and you had 2 ninth pans and a rack on the back, and you just would rest. Eventually you got to where it was a really busy night. You're I don't even really have to sear it much more. It'll finish cooking from the heat. Just in the, so.
Don't you think that's an interesting thing about chefs is you put us in a square room with an open fire and we'll figure out how to do a 6-course meal.
Yeah.
We will figure it out.
Exactly.
Man,
I might not be happy about it.
Yeah.
But
Grab that milk crate. We're going to sous vide in that.
Wrap in plastic. We'll waterproof this thing.
Yeah. The hot spots above all right, this is almost done cooking. I'm going to put it here.
Yep.
This is done cooking. I'm going to put it here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So it was, thankfully I'd already had the speed. So I never had to work hot apps, cold apps in that restaurant. So,
I mean, the raw bar sounds like a nightmare at 500 covers.
Dude, yeah.
I mean, a complete.
I mean, I can shuck an oyster, but there were guys that couldn't cook fish or keep up, but they could shuck oysters.
Yeah, sure.
You never seen. But yeah, so started there and then kind of would bounce between saute and grill, but mostly stayed on saute for the rest of the time there. And I worked my way up to junior sous chef. My ex-wife and I eventually like split up. I've been there 4 years. I had
oh wow, you're there 4 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had a bunch of PTO. You know, I was like supporting.
Yeah. Right.
Right. So I couldn't really
Bounce around.
Yeah.
A lot. Yeah. I get it.
even though like I'd thought about leaving a couple times. Just the benefits were good. So I had full PTO, full sick time. So I was like, I need to use this PTO up. So I was like, hey, I want to go stage. I'm thinking about moving to New York. So I went and staged at Boulay for 3 weeks, and then Maria for a week.
Oh, amazing.
Both awesome. I wanted to work in a Michelin restaurant. Like,
Yes.
always wanted to. Like, ever since I started cooking and kind of read French Laundry and read, like, both Michael Roman's books and, you know, kind of started getting into that as I got to CIA.
Is that something Wally instilled on you?
I don't-
As a young mentor, like, did he put you on the path of, like, you got to go work at these places, you got to go travel?
It wasn't necessarily that he put me on that path as much as, like, any of these places you want to work, let me know.
Yeah.
Like, I can get you a job at any restaurant in
Right
the
on.
city because half the people had worked for him before.
Right. Did you think the environment around you at those places, which all the cooks were talking about, like some of the places I worked, that's all we talked about.
Right.
Like, this cookbook, that chef, this chef in New York, what they're doing. So it was a constant, like, every day an education on, you know, our dream of, oh, I always want to work for Daniel Blue, and this is why, and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I felt like it was just those early restaurants for me were an environment of learning about all these other chefs that I'd never heard of. Cookbooks were being passed around like playing cards, and I'd go home and I'd read and study it. I remember the day the French Laundry book came out, and we were flipping through that at this restaurant Mango in Chicago, and I was like, holy fuck. Like, it was one of those moments where it was like, I didn't know food could do this. And It was so clean and pristine, and I was just like, I fucking got to do this. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And, like, the only people, you know, I feel like, you know, Windus was a good mentor. Like, we're still friends today, like, still talk a lot. And, you know, he and the CDC, Danny, at the time, and maybe one other person in Blue Zoo were really, like, bringing that stuff. Or, like, hey, look at this. That's when I was kind of exposed to, like, you know, modified starches and stuff for the first time was through Windus.
That's all you need is one guy to kind of like spark the energy.
Right.
Because I think everybody's curious, but if you don't really know or you're not talking about it, then it's your own curiosity as opposed to like bounce your ideas off other people, you know?
Yep. And this is the time of blogs, too. Do you remember Chadzilla? Do you remember that blog? Or,
No, I remember E-Gullet. I rember E-Gullet. Yeah, E-Gullet was huge.
Sean had Ping Island Strike. So
Yep.
they're like, Shields had.
Yeah, what was Shields'? He was in Virginia at the time, right? Yeah.
He was at.
Great pictures.
What's the name of that place?
Townhouse.
Townhouse, yeah. And then there were a couple other guys down Tarver King and other people doing all this. So you also had that. So, like, anyways, I'm like, I want to go to New York. I want to work in a Michelin restaurant. The kitchen is going to be that much better.
What was your like top three, or did you just like you just knew you had to get to New York and you're going to figure it out?
I had met, I might not pronounce her name right, but a girl named Najat Kanash, she had worked at El Bulli a few years. She might have spent a little time staging at Noma. She has a restaurant in, where is it? Somewhere in the middle, or I can't remember. I have to think of where she's from. But she's like, she kind of became a mentor just through like Facebook Messenger at the time.
No kidding.
And like she kind of knew like everything that I was going through. Like, I don't know, it just like was like easy to talk to online because she was a chef and her fiance or boyfriend or whatever, or business partner was a chef, and she's like, you need to like, she's like, first you need to quit drinking. Second, you need to go work at a restaurant. So she's the one who got me the stage at Boulay.
Sound advice, man. Wow. Yeah.
Especially for like a 20, at that time, you know, probably 23, 24 year old.
Yeah.
You know? So she gets me the stage at Boulay, and then Chef Windus get his brother or stepbrother had opened Fiore, whatever Michael White's like next restaurant that he opened was. So he got me the stage at Maria, and I loved. They were both great restaurants, but I loved Boulay. Yeah. Because dude's a psycho.
Complete psycho. Complete chaos from what I hear in the kitchen.
I love it. I loved everything about it. Yeah. Like, just show up at 4:30 with, like, he was walking around, like, jamming cod in your face. He's like, it's still in rigor mortis. Like, it's like slime all over your nose. You're like, dude, what are you doing? Yeah. And he's like, it's going on the menu. And, like, all right. So you come over to the fish station and be like, we're going to get these tomatoes. We're going to throw vanilla and Reglisse in this. And, blah, blah, blah. You know, like, just like, comes up with a dish.
Trash your station.
Yeah, and then you taste it, you're like, what?
How did you do that?
Insane. So good.
How the fuck did you do that?
So good.
A friend of mine has a story of Pierre Garnier doing the same fucking thing. Would show up at 5:30, rifle through everybody's shit, create a dish, and now it was on the menu. And he said that dish, like, some of Garmager was picking up, some of the meat station was picking up, some of Poissonnier was picking up, the fish station, and then the guy at the pass. So, like, bringing that all together, there were, like, people, like, nose diving over the pass to get them the herbs and like sliding over from here, and it's just fucking complete fucking chaos, man. Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah, Boulay. I heard many stories of Boulay being the same way.
But it was cool because it was like they were doing really good food. They had a couple menus. You had your fish station, like classic. Fish was on this side, meat was on this side, Garmager was over here, pastry was over here. Canapés and Garmager came. Right. You know, but I was exposed to a lot of ingredients that I had never used before too, because it was so Japanese.
Yeah, maybe some cooking techniques too.
Yeah, like using kuzu to thicken things. Yes. Like get your sauce to where you like it. Yeah, taste wise. As far as like for seafood, a lot of kuzu. My first day staging, they're like, hey, can you small dice 600 pan of onions for the beef cheek?
That's it.
Yeah,
no
sure.
problem. Yeah.
So I did
See you tomorrow.
Yeah, they're like, oh, you're done? Can you do another one? Yeah, and I was like, yeah, sure.
It's like,
so I'm down in the basement, you know, like
some of those things, like you want to work fast enough to be like, this guy's good, but you want to work slow enough to not get another shit project.
Right. Exactly.
It's a hard balance, man. Yeah. Especially your first day, you just want to go in and crush it. They're like, great, peel these peas. No, shuck them and then take the skin off of them.
Yeah. Great. So yeah, like it was just cool to see, like, so the beef cheek process, you know, like 600 pan of onions gets sweated down, they sear the cheek, throw it in, cover it, cook it, and there's a bunch of other stuff in it. Next day, same thing, onions, pour that cooking liquid on, cook it down. Next day, they make the sauce. So it's just like so much depth of flavor. Like lobster stock was a 3-day process, like duck, you know, like, and you're like, oh man, these sauces are tight. And Waldy's sauces were like, there was a lot, I mean, so much wine and alcohol went in it. So like
pulling
bottles
it off the table.
And bottles and bottles. Yeah. Buckets off the table.
Right. I love these fucking stories, man. This is why I wanted to sit down with like a chef like you. This is why we started the podcast, Preston. For stories like this. Like this takes me back to like 1998 of like
the good years.
French cook, the good years of getting your ass fucking kicked every day on the line and just walking away being like, wow, I learned something today.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
Exactly.
Great. So how long did you stage there for?
So I was at Boulay for 3 weeks, and then I was at Maria for a week. You know, thankfully the second day they let me see that I could do stuff, so I got to work canapes.
Yeah, great.
Learned how to cannelle pretty quickly because there was like a cannelle like celery sorbet, and
make 1,000.
He's like figuring it out. I think the kid running the station was like a CIA intern, and he couldn't do them. He's like, here, you do the canapes, and I'll do these. And then the fish guy kind of saw me working like the third day and was like, I want him the rest of the time.
The sign of any young cook that's totally in the shits that you know the kitchen hates is like, hey, do this stuff that I can't do.
Yeah,
you know, I'll take care of all this stuff. You're like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah. Why don't I just pick everything else up?
Yeah, right. Over here. How long you been on the station? 4 months, and like still can't make a cannelle. Yeah. You're like, oh, hey, yeah, just make these cannelles, man. You can handle it, right?
Yeah. So I'm
gonna go cry.
Exactly. I'm gonna plate like he like plated the terrine.
I'll wipe
like
the rims. Scoop. Yeah, slice and scoop out right. Yeah. I'll wipe the rims. You handle everything else.
Exactly. But yeah, so you know, I go back. Thankfully, I had PTO, so I got paid this whole time.
Yeah,
which is sick.
Yeah,
it's great.
So important.
I had a room in Williamsburg. Like first stop in Williamsburg was I can't remember what that road is there, but anyways, like a buddy of mine from high school had an extra room, so the plan was to move there. But we're like, yeah, this is what you're gonna get paid, like before taxes. Yeah. a week. And you're like, I was like, man, I don't think I can make that work.
Right.
And, you know, like going through a separation, eventually divorce. Like I like don't want to have to ride my bike to work in all conditions. You know, I'd like to be able to take the train. And so I get back. I'm home for like 2 or 3 days back to work. And Jeremiah Langren, who now owns the Dabney, was the CDC at McCrady's and posted, hey, we're hiring.
Yep.
So I told Witness, I was like, you know, do you mind?
You're living in Florida at the time.
Yeah. So okay, I'm back at work at Blue Zoo, and he says, if I let you go stage there, you better come back with a job this time. So, you know, reach out to him like next weekend. I go up there for a couple days, and then he offers me the job, and I end up moving November of 2011 to
Charleston.
McCrady's. Yep.
Yeah.
So kind of same thing when I get up there. They start everybody on prep no matter what.
At McCrady's. Yeah.
So I'm on prep.
And what year was this?
2011.
Okay.
So I'm on prep, you know, come in, kind of work with Lucas, the sous chef, in the mornings. It was relatively, well, it was slow on the books Monday through Wednesday, but there was a lot of walk-ins. Yeah. So they always ran one fish person to control labor. So fish solo was...
Now this was before, I don't mean to interrupt, this was before it turned into like the tasting menu open bar format. This was an a la carte restaurant.
Yeah, so you had a 3-course menu. Eventually we had 3-course, a 4-course, and then anywhere from 8 to 13.
Yeah.
All at the same time, depending on what they were ordering.
Wow.
You know? And you had the bar menu.
That's the worst scenario for any cook.
It was crazy.
Is running tasting menus and then a 5-top sit style. It's like, we'll just do a la carte. You're like, throw 5 pans on the flat top. You're like, fuck.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
Ordering 1 entree chicken and then a bunch of fish.
Yeah. Order fires.
Well, I should tell you this story quickly before. So back in 2009, I went and staged at McCrady's, and it was the like hardest, worst, like most eye-opening experience.
No kidding.
Sean was like shooting for Art Culinaire. I worked with Jeremiah the first night. He was on Fish Solo at the time, and he was still a chef de partie. Kind of worked with him, and then the next day he wasn't there. He was off, and Sean needed stuff for like, you know, his shoot, and he's like, it was just like, make me a bay laurel tea, or make me a laurel tea.
Yeah.
And I was like looking for the herbs. I was like, what? And I was like, what's laurel? And they're like, oh, it's bay leaf.
Yeah.
I said, okay.
Great.
So I make this bay tea. He's like, I'll just make it taste good. I'm like,
for a photo shoot.
Yeah. But you know, like I did, you know, whatever. I did. He kind of, that one was easy. So then we had to make this olive oil pudding, which is like 65-degree egg yolk, glucose, isomalt.
Yes.
You know. So I had never worked with isomalt or glucose. I asked Dano, who's a good buddy of mine.
Yeah, I know Dano. Yeah, great
for
guy.
the 65-degree yolks. He's like, oh, those aren't the ones you need. Those ones from Cold Apps. But they were soft cooked yolks for the salad, which weren't the right ones.
Yes.
So it like wasn't coming together. It kept breaking. I made it like 3 or 4 times, and like at this point, I'm like almost ready to walk out because I have to keep grabbing Sean.
Yeah.
And he's like, let's make it together this time. So I have already had to cook more eggs for pastry or Cold Apps because I've used so many of them. And then he comes over and he's like, these aren't the right eggs. And he's like, Dano, give them. So he goes and just takes the eggs from Dano.
Yeah.
And I can tell Dano's like probably pissed off about it.
Yeah.
So we start making it, and he's like, oh, I remember we got to melt the glucose or the isomalt before we had the glucose. And then, so it's like, he's like, I haven't made this recipe in a long time.
Thanks.
So we eventually make
Thanks,
it.
man.
Yeah. And I'm just like, oh man, I'm just like, feel so defeated when I leave there. Fast forward.
You know, everybody hates you.
Yeah.
You know?
But yeah, so then, you know, eventually it goes better and I get the job. So like I just bust my ass on prep to try to get everything done. It was like one of those prep lists where like you think you're going to get the prep list done and you get to go home, but that's not the case.
Right.
Like you're there.
Yeah.
So the prep list keeps growing, but I would just rip through it. So I would just go work with like, help the Cold Apps guy out or something. And then on those like fish solo nights, I would work fish, veg, just stay and like help the dude work fish veg so I could learn the station. So I ended up jumping like people that had been there for a while because I could work fish veg better than they could. And some of that was just because of the quickness I had to have at Beacon and Blue Zoo, you know, especially Blue Zoo is like insane.
What kind of experience do some of those guys have? Like they have good restaurant experience?
Yeah,
or you definitely came in with like, I've been around.
Well, so James, I can't remember his last, James Levins, he had been working at a few Michelin stars in New York. A lot of the guys didn't have a ton of like crazy experience, but like, you know, it's like a scout like watches a sport and like picks these dudes that are on like in junior league hockey and they end up being like the best players.
Monsters.
Yeah, it's like insane. So I feel like it's the best kitchen like I ever worked with.
Excellent.
But that was the hardest kitchen I ever worked. It was like way harder than what I thought Michelin kitchens were going to be. But it was ran the exact same way. Like
why
the
was it harder?
It's just it was a lot of work. It wasn't a huge staff. There was 2, 4, 5, 6 cooks, including pastry, with one prep person. Then you had 1 to 2 sous chefs in the CDC.
Yeah, you had to go in and do all your prep.
You wash all your dishes service. Until like 4 o'clock. Yep.
And the prep guy, he wasn't really doing prep for you. He was doing like
doing
the bulk stuff.
Yeah, he would do like stocks and stuff, and then peel and you have to be on him like, yo, what? Why is this not done yet? I need it.
Right. And then pieces out at like 5 o'clock. Like, is the list done? Nope. I'll see you tomorrow.
Well, thankfully that didn't happen. You ended up being there like by the end of the day, be like to the prep guy, like, why haven't you started floors yet? Like we're breaking down.
Right.
But like you're just running, like actually like run. The only time you sit down is like, well, eventually we had to for lunch, but usually you ate standing up.
Yeah.
The only time you sat down was like to go to the bathroom, you know?
Yeah.
So
it's like The Bear. Have you watched The Bear?
Yeah.
It's like I watched half of it and I'm like, I can't watch this anymore. This is like before I watch go to bed and have nightmares.
Yeah.
Like, I told my fiance, I'm like, I can't fucking watch this anymore, man.
Dude, it's very stressful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's like you're just running. But I learned a lot there too. I think the food was. I think if that restaurant was in New York, you probably would have heard a lot more about it than you did.
I think. Well, I don't know if it was an industry like that was a great restaurant. You know, back in the day.
Yeah.
You know, everybody was talking about it, and Sean was like climbing the ladder to the top of his game for sure. Yeah.
He had so when I got there, Husk was a year old. But you got to like cook with some cool people for some cool people. We did a dinner with Magnus Nielsen. That was pretty cool. He's intense. Definitely doesn't like you using anything but your hands to touch his food.
Oh, God, I hate that, man.
Like, what are you doing using those tweezers? But it was a good experience. But there were, like I said, there were guys that had been there for a long time that were even, not the guys that jumped, but like people that had been there even a year before I got there, 2 years before I got there, like, if there was a sous chef position, it wasn't going to be me moving up eventually. Right. And I wanted to keep moving up. So when I heard Sean was going to open a Husk in Nashville, I started talking a little bit about it. And he's like, well, send Baxter to do Music to Your Mouth. It's like a Music to Your Mouth, like a food festival in South Carolina. Okay. It's pretty fun.
Sounds dope.
So I had spent some time with Sean, but like mostly like after work with like a group of people drinking or whatever, So this is the first alone.
Was he in the kitchen a lot at McCrady's then? Or?
He bounced back and forth between.
He had a lot going on.
I mean, Husk was like a year in. That place
was a monster.
All the VIPs wanted to go to Husk and Husk Bar,
So that's when you built a relationship with Dano, though.
Yeah, so
he was running the kitchen in there, right?
Jeremiah was,
okay.
And Dano was the executive sous. So on his days off, he was.
Yeah. Both great dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it was. I learned a lot. I've learned a lot. Like I would go forage with Jeremiah a lot in the mornings. So we had a lot of fun. Like just acting like we were 12 again out in the wood, like chopping down. He's really afraid of spiders. So we'd have like one day pretend like we were knights chopping down like stuff with like just knocking banana spiders out of the tree with these big sticks. And But then he'd have to go to work, and it was like,
reality. Right?
Yeah, like we're not friends. He's like, not a friend anymore.
We're not friends. All that shit that happened in the woods.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody about it.
Yeah. But yeah, so this is like Sean and I together in a car.
How long were you at McCrady's for before thinking you wanted to go to Husk?
So it would have probably been end of 2012. Mm-hmm. So about a year and a half maybe I had been there. I had worked every station. I had worked pastry, so it was like.
And you're like, there's nowhere to go up because of these guys. That's a smart move, huh?
So 2 hours in a car with Sean, like, it's pretty intimidating, dude. Back then, we'd never spent alone time together, except for maybe once at the farm, like because we used to have a plot of land out at Thornhill Farm, so I grew some seeds. He told me if they didn't grow, that the future of Southern food was in my hand. I had never done it, Well, thankfully they grew. But yeah, so he just kind of told me a bit about it and said it was going to be kind of a mix between Husk and McCrady, so like a little more refined than what Husk Charleston was. Mm-hmm. So eventually he offers me the job as sous chef, and I move up here with Morgan McGlone, who's my roommate.
Morgan, yeah.
Love that guy.
I forgot he was there.
Yeah.
I forgot he was there, yeah.
So we move up here in April of 2013. And just kind of seeing, the restaurant wasn't finished yet, so we start meeting purveyors and and it was, opening a restaurant's pretty crazy. When we opened Husk, Sean was filming Mind of a Chef, so we'd have to like rearrange the kitchen every morning so they could film.
Yeah.
We'd be prepping everything downstairs, also prepping for like the guest chef and like the filming upstairs, and then at a certain time, everybody would have to run up and we have to hurry up and rearrange it so we could get set up for dinner service. So it was like pretty hectic opening.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of the rest is.
Yeah, the rest is
history.
More or less history. Yeah, now you're here. You did a quick stint in Atlanta.
Yeah.
That was after Husk then, right?
Well, yeah, so I went from Husk to Bastion.
Yeah, that's right.
So had surgery in 2017, went to Bastion after like 3 months of just being like in a boot or a cast and then a boot. Which I feel like you wouldn't see this these days. And maybe I shouldn't have done it, but like first day, boot off. My first day at Bastion, 15 hours, 14 hours, whatever.
Not
my
recommended.
Ankle's like a grapefruit.
But,
dude, it was
not recommended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I pushed through it.
Right.
So. But yeah, so it was ended up getting married to my wife, Michaela, and then we ended up getting pregnant relatively soon after that. And Kevin Gillespie was a friend of mine. I had met him in New York when we went up for like a Best New Restaurant nomination with Sean, and we just kept in touch. And I went down there and cooked with them at Gun Show one time, and he's like, "Hey, I'm opening this restaurant. Are you interested in coming down?" So like I talked to Josh about it a little bit. We went down, checked it out, and just thought like, "Hey, this will be a good idea because we have the kid coming. My sister-in-law lives down there with her kids. Like we'll have family close."
Makes sense, right?
So yeah, I went down there. We opened. It wasn't.
What's the name of it?
It's called Cold Beer.
Cold Beer. Okay, so
he's like, you don't mind working at a restaurant called Cold Beer, being straight edge, and I was like, nah, that's fine.
Where the fuck did that name come from?
Well, he is. I think. Well, I don't know. I can't remember exactly why he said. I think it was because when he would go fishing with his dad or grandpa when he was a kid, there was this market that they stopped at, and I always had this neon cold beer sign.
Right.
And he's like, he was on the belt line, just a lot of walking up and down, and he wanted to have this like neon cold beer sign. But when you walk in, it's like refined food and like really good cocktails, and it was like beer. So it was like the idea was the cocktails and the food ideas came up together to like match, and then the beers would pair too.
Right on.
So like, people will come in and order the whole menu and then order cocktails and beers to pair with that.
Very cool, yeah.
Unless there was like 15 of each. But just like, I don't think Atlanta likes my food. They just didn't understand what it was. I don't know. It was kind of weird. Maybe it wasn't me. Maybe
I think you're being hard on yourself.
Yeah, maybe we were just like They were also just developing. We were at the very end of it. Now they've developed way past it, and he's reopened, rebranded and reopened, and this place is slamming.
What's different?
Well, they've changed the menu. It's called Slab Town, so I think it's more like a pub type stuff. So they've been able to stay busy. Mm-hmm. Well, COVID happened.
Right, and everything's out there.
So everybody's furloughed, and they, they kind of were doing, I can't remember what it's called, but they cook for like 500 families a day out of cold beer to keep it open. So government's paying them to do that. So they still do that in the mornings. There's now like a coffee shop that there was a window that you would serve like to the beer or in the bar, like to the cocktail waitresses outside. Like here's this. So they do like a coffee window because the coffee shop next door closed down during COVID. So they're able to do that and coffee in the morning. So you have other like forms of revenue coming in. So they seem to be doing well. But yeah, so we get furloughed. I've been talking to Josh about eventually wanting to move back, and everything kind of gets sped up.
Yeah, a little bit.
Because they're, it's like, hey, we want to reopen in June. Can you be here to take over? Mm-hmm. And I said, well, let me talk to my wife and talk to Kevin and see, because I miss Nashville. I was gonna give Kevin 2 years no matter what, and see kind of how it went. And I was like, hey, he called me and he's like, hey, this is the situation. Mm-hmm. We're gonna change how things are done at cold beer. For a long time, they were only cooking for those 500 families or whatever it was, like doing the packed meals. He's like, or you can go over to Gun Show and we'll figure out like what you can do there. But either way,
Gun Show's such a great restaurant.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
But he's like, I'm gonna have to cut your pay, and I think he knew I didn't want to work like under another chef. Not that even the Chris is like my buddy. Like
that's tough.
It'd be a weird thing.
That's tough.
know. And I was like, well, I actually have this opportunity, and he's like, 100% support you doing it. Like I think you should do it.
Right on.
He just felt bad that he moved my wife and 2-week-old down, and this happened, but
how
nobody
can
knew,
predict
right?
This? Yeah. I mean, I thought it was going to last 2 weeks. I was living in Bali, and they're like, hey, we're going to close for a month, and then I was like, great, I'll just fly home to Chicago, party with all my friends, and I'll just come back in 3 weeks when it's blown over. Mm-hmm. So we were so naive in the beginning of the pandemic, man.
You didn't know.
Yeah,
I saw a funny meme the other day. It was like, never forget, and it was all these people like things they did when they went to the grocery store.
Right. With the pot lids on their faces and the hoodies.
One lady had a like a green like kitchen scrubby.
Yeah.
With like string tied around. Oh man.
The guy had a guy with a snorkel and the scuba diving suit. You're like, that's real. That's not even a joke. Those are real people.
Real. I saw people in Atlanta like completely wrapped in trash bags. Like all you could see were their eyes. Like it's not going to get through your skin.
It doesn't work like that. Man. Yeah.
But
okay, but this is around the time you stopped drinking.
So I stopped drinking in 2015.
Oh, 15.
Yeah.
Okay.
October 2015.
What brought you to that point? You want to talk about that, or?
Yeah. So I think a couple things. Like one was just kind of like we talked about earlier, is just who I was and how I managed people when I was hungover.
Yeah.
I already have a short temper, but it doesn't make it
right.
Didn't make it easier. And that'd be the same thing out. Like I like to go have, like, especially me and my buddy Cash my roommate, we would go out constantly, like every night, like you were saying, like, oh, it's Wednesday, what's going on? Hey, you want to go out for a little bit? But like, I didn't like drinking a ton of beer because it made me feel bloated.
Same.
So we would just
have one beer
rip vodka sodas,
right?
right?
Yeah, vodka sodas. Gin and tonics.
Yeah. And it'd be like, 3 Crow on a Sunday, it'd be like 2 o'clock. Like, yeah, let's go to 3 Crow. Like, it's so early. It's like, yeah, but if we go now, go have a couple drinks, we'll go home at like 7.
Never happens.
At like 1 a.m., you're at 3:08.
Right.
You're like, oh my God,
right.
what happened?
Dancing to disco music for some reason.
And then then you don't remember anything once you 3:08. Probably slip something in there.
Yeah.
Who knows? Like you go to every night ended at 3:08. Like you'd never felt good the next day.
Yeah.
Love those guys though. But yeah, so it was like I didn't want to feel like crap anymore. I had a short temper, but like I said, I like to have fun when we were out. But if somebody said something to someone or like, you have a problem?
Yes.
Or, you know, like
there's a complete misunderstanding.
What'd you say
that's
to him?
Blown up into some. I said, "Excuse me, can I get through?"
Yeah.
You know?
Like, so that, you know, kind of part of that. I guess I was getting older and didn't want to be as aggressive.
I think it's a lot to get older. I mean, same as you. Like, I quit drinking like 90%, which we talked about. It's not because I had a problem, not because I liked it, but the residuals of it. So you go out, you have a party, you have a night, and the next day you're hungover, but like 2 or 3 days after, it's still kind of in your system. It's still clouding you. And then 3 days later, you drink again. And what I noticed when I stopped drinking is like probably like the month marker of like how much sleep I was getting.
Yeah.
How my brain was working so clear. And then every once in a while I have a drink and it's like I wake up and I'm hungover. And then like 2 days later, I'm like, fuck, man, I'm still cloudy.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, oh, this stays with you for a while, you know? And I'm in a 45. I can't do the hangovers anymore.
Right.
You know? I was living in Bangkok. And I was staying with my friend Garima, who has a restaurant there. I stayed with her and her husband for like 2 months. It was 115 degrees every day. I was like walking around, just like seeing the sights and like, so I was walking around probably like 50% dehydrated anyway. And then it was my birthday and we all went out and had a night. We stayed out till like 3 a.m, probably in Thailand drinking the shittiest alcohol moonshine that they make, putting it in like Absolute bottles.
Yeah.
And I was fucking hungover for 3 days. Like the first day I thought I was gonna die. Like I probably should have went to the hospital. And like the 2 other days I just laid in bed. And I was like, I can never feel like that was the straw that broke the camel's. I can never feel like this again. And I just stopped drinking. And that was it. And like a month later I moved to Phuket. I was doing jiu-jitsu in the jungle for like 2 months. I felt great. Waking up, I was eating right. I was doing doubles. I'd go in the morning class and night class, which I'd never done before. And then I went to Bali, was hanging out in Ubud, going to yoga. And I did yoga for like 45 days in a row. And it completely changed my mindset. It completely changed the way I think about going out. I never associated going out and drinking. That was a big obstacle to overcome. It's like you're with a whole bunch of people. Right. Well, I don't drink. Well, it's like, well, why don't you drink? Then you got to tell the story.
Yeah.
Then this, blah, blah, blah. It's always these things that people want answers for. So I just drink soda water. Or like you, I didn't like the person that I was. I can associate every relationship that had a misunderstanding, every fight that I was ever in, anything that was blown out of proportion relates to alcohol.
Right.
And since I stopped doing that, I don't have those fights anymore. Yeah. I have great relationships with my friends. My relationship with my fiance is amazing because I don't get drunk and then go to that world. You know, I eat an edible, I go to bed.
Yeah.
What happens is I giggle at stupid stuff and she's like, oh, go to bed. Go to bed.
Meme lord is out.
Yeah, me, I always know when the edible's kicking in is like when it's like midnight and it's completely dark in my room except the phone and I'm like laughing out loud at some stupid meme and I'm like, it's time to fucking go to bed.
Yeah.
But it was those situations, like you said, at 3:00 somebody walks by and you're like, what the fuck? It's like those situations don't happen and I like it.
Right.
I like it a lot. And it changed me as a person, which obviously it did to you. So you stopped drinking in 2015 just because you didn't like the person you were? You didn't...
Yeah, I was, like, same thing.
Did you have kids? When did you have kids then?
I didn't have...
This was later.
My son was 2019.
Okay.
So I hadn't met my wife yet. The same thing, like, maybe overreacting to a situation or not knowing how to handle it when you've been drinking and like it's not the interaction you want to have with like your significant other.
Right.
But even the next day when you're even if you're sober and it's still like you said in your system,
it's
like
still cloudy.
You still heat up pretty quick.
Yes.
Yeah. So just kind of did that. That's when I started getting most of my tattoos and I listened to a lot of hardcore music. Started listening to like a lot more straight edge, getting back into a lot more straight edge hardcore at the time. And my tattoo artist Ryan was straight edge, so we were just like talking. And then eventually, like, I was like, I'd just gonna completely cut everything out. And
so were you still kind of like, oh, I'll have a drink every once in a while?
No, I wouldn't drink.
Okay.
Like every once in a while, like hit a vape pen or something. I dipped for a bit. So I started dipping when when I first moved back to Orlando. I had like an hour and 20-minute drive because we lived in Sanford, which was like halfway between like my ex-wife's dad's house and my job. So like, get off work and it's an hour and 20-minute drive. You're falling asleep, like pop one of those and
That's fucking gross.
The buzz wakes you up.
That's fucking gross, man. It is a buzz though.
It's It's better than drinking a Red Bull. Yeah. Well, I guess probably not better.
I dipped one time when I was 13 and I threw up violently for like an hour and I was like, that's it, man. I think I ate it actually.
Oh, dude. I dipped with my cousin when I was like 15 and same thing, like I was so sick. I was like, I'm never going to do this again. And then it's in your face in football in college.
In college football.
I don't know how
Florida.
People dip and play. It's like, what?
Yeah.
That's not like I never swallowed it or anything, I'm not, but it just became like a habit to keep you awake. So eventually like just cut everything out, start trying to focus on like healthy lifestyle. So I was doing that, eventually met my wife and then I had the surgery in 2017.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I had so much free time. We went to like every Sounds game and like, you know what? I'm going to drink a large soda and I'm going to eat 2 hot dogs and an ice cream out of a helmet every single game. I'm going to finally go to dinner, like places I've never been able to go to because I've been so like, that's just kind of how I guess I let myself go in that time, but I also enjoyed, got to enjoy.
What was the surgery?
So they found a cyst in my bone in my ankle. So it's actually like down on my foot. And because of like scar tissue damage, cartilage damage.
From football?
Probably. Football and soccer for a long time.
Being on your feet at a restaurant
and then worked. Yeah.
Right. Didn't help.
It hurt for like 7 years. And eventually I finally went to the doctor because I tore my meniscus at a hardcore show. So it was just like
great story.
Yeah. Trying to roundhouse someone and I slipped. I like into the person and like when I hit the ground, the wet floor slipped and
you stand back up. You're like, oh,
I was like,
I'm not gonna walk this off.
Yeah. So then I went to like a hardcore festival like 2 weeks later and I bought like a knee brace so I could pit. Well, that was the last time I was in there. But yeah, so they get in there, they remove the cyst and it ends up being like 3 times bigger than they thought. Originally they thought it was the size of like a dime. So it's just a long process. They got to literally like scoop the bone out and then pack like a bone meal or something in there that eventually the bone like will heal back over. So now I have like arthritis, like cartilage is destroyed, so I've been going to physical therapy just every once in a while. I'll get like dry needling or just
great.
It sucks, but it definitely helps.
It helps out a lot. Yeah. So how long were you off your feet for then? It sounds like a long recovery
3
process.
Months.
Fuck, man.
Yeah.
3 months in the boot.
Yeah, I was in the cast for a month, and then the boot for 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you're just pigging out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's when I went to Bastion. So I took my wife for her birthday to Bastion, and Josh was like, "Hey, you want to go get coffee sometime?" So that's kind of where all that, me ended up going to Bastion. And working there for a while. So that was the first time I'd already known all of them from, moving here.
Of course,
kind of the first time working for the company, so, yeah.
So you're in your boot, eating hot dogs and ice cream.
Yeah. So, so this is good. So I was in such pain, and, like, I haven't done any drugs at this point not that I did drugs, Mom, but, like, I haven't had anything in my system except ibuprofen. In a couple years. So like I'm on this like heavy pain med, but he didn't give me a ton of it. And like when the nerve block wore off the next morning, like they had to take me back to the emergency room because I was in such pain. They like IV me, like I couldn't sleep, like the worst pain I've ever felt in my entire life. Felt like someone was like literally just smashing, like wouldn't stop hitting me in the ankle with a hammer. So I have a hard time sleeping, and I'm taking all this like heavy like painkillers now. And the only thing that I could fall asleep to was Bob Ross.
Oh man.
So I would watch hours and hours of Bob Ross.
Yeah, for me it's the Cubs games. Cubs games put me right to sleep. But Bob, that's a good one. I'm gonna try that. That's really good.
So then eventually, like once I got the cast off and I could start moving around a little better, I was like, I'm gonna buy some oil stuff.
Yeah, I see your
paintings. Like he said, everybody can do
on
it.
the list. I see your paintings out. Yeah, all right.
So that's where it started. So like I started doing this oils and.
So it went from watching Emerald to starting cooking to watching Bob Ross to now you're painting.
Which I've always wanted to kind of paint in the past. My mom said oils are too messy, and then.
But he makes it look so fucking easy, man. It's like false advertising.
It's
like
true.
You watch it and you're just like, oh, you just put a tree here and this is how you do it. Like, fuck, I could do that.
But I feel like I watched enough of it. I'll show you. I'll show you my first ever oil painting here in a little bit. But come winter, it's so messy. So I like started doing it outside. Well, come winter time, like I don't want to do this outside anymore. And like the oil, it's just it is very messy. My mom was right. So I had bought a set that had like oil, acrylic, and watercolor.
Yep.
I was like, I'm gonna do watercolor. So I started messing around with watercolor, and then that just kind of became
your thing.
What I was drawn to. Yeah, there's a guy in town named Todd Saul who's become a really good friend of mine. Who I reached out to because my buddy Chad that owns Adventure Tattoo.
Oh, Chad Kopenlier.
Yeah,
great guy.
He's like, yo, check this guy out. So I just reached out to him and was like, hey, do you ever do like workshops or like one-on-ones or anything? He's like, yeah. So, we go paint out at Bear Creek one day and end up chatting. And he's like, well, I used to be a touring musician. In between touring, I was a line cook in New York City. Born and raised in New York. Eventually got into like computer stuff. And then his wife worked for BMI. They ended up moving here. And he's like, I'm quitting the other job. I'm going to pursue art full time. So he's just incredible, like watercolor artist. So we just became really good friends and had like some very similar interests. And every once in a while, I still try to get out and paint with him when I can. But at any painting I do, like, I always send to him for like critique. Or if like I have to do like somebody wants me to do a painting for him, I'm like, hey, what do you think about this composition? Or he helps a lot. So
I love when you post those on Facebook and Instagram.
Thanks.
Which goes back to my original question of if you weren't cooking, what would you be doing? I'd be fucking painting.
Well, I'll tell you, I started a painting the other night. And every day at work, I just was thinking about wanting to finish it because it's hard with the kids. Like, if they're around, it's a nightmare trying to paint. Like, I've ruined a lot of paintings because my daughter woke up from a nap or something. So I was just like, the last 3 days this week, I was like, man, I need to finish that painting.
What techniques from cooking in the restaurant industry do you utilize painting?
Well, I think it might be opposite.
Okay. So, interesting. All right.
Yeah. So, I kind of learned like in art, like, art is subjective, right? I don't think, to me, like real abstract art, I think I don't understand it.
Like Pollock or something?
Dot with like a line. Like my son drew a sun the other day.
Yeah.
Like that's impressive. He's 3.5. He drew a circle with a bunch of triangles. A dot and a line, like it's not for me.
Or a banana duct taped to a wall. Remember they did that at Art Basel a couple years ago.
Like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
But then I realized like taste is all subjective. So coming into Catbird Seat, it's like it's pretty incredible chefs have worked there before me, that have worked at some incredible restaurants. So it was like, it was coming in like, I wouldn't say I was scared, but it's like, it's a pretty high bar to try to like come into and keep it at this level of what people think
I would agree with
restaurant
that.
is supposed to be.
I 100% agree with that, yeah.
So like going in, I had to think like, and I think after the first year, like I've gotten more confident in it, but it's also like, who cares what they think?
If
I think it tastes good, this is how it's supposed to.
Absolutely,
and like,
man.
We know it tastes good. Maybe somebody doesn't like it. Like we cook 95 to 100% seafood.
Right.
People don't like seafood, then they're probably not going to really like it. But some people think it's too salty, or it's like I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna have it taste the way I think it needs to taste, and then taste is subjective. So I think kind of like more kind of like monochromatic dishes, less like adding something for it to be colorful, has been a big key. Like I'm trying to still understand color theory and watercolor, so trying to figure out how to get like different gray tones so it's not like so intense. Like you don't paint with like just yellow, just red, just
It's like tattooing.
Right.
You see them put 6 colors down, all of a sudden they made this beautiful green turquoise. You're like, that's black and yellow. How did you do that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's kind of like that too. But I've also started realizing like when you're painting, like especially plein air, because it's drying on you, you just have to be so reactive. I've started cooking more that way too. So like, all right, I know I have spiny lobster coming in. I don't know what to do with it, but I have fermented pumpkin juice or so, like, all right, well, I didn't order anything, so I have 2 ingredients at the restaurant, and I have to turn them into a dish. And we'll be, hey, this is going on the menu. I don't know what it's going to taste like yet to my, beverage director, but I'll try to let you taste it by like 4:30.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like I have more successful dishes that way than when like I'm going to test this dish out for a long time, and because then I think I get too in my head about
100%.
This is going to be the greatest dish I've ever created.
Yes,
and you taste it and you're like,
I
agree. Suck at cooking.
The best dishes I've ever created in my life were during service on the fly, where I just wasn't thinking and just putting things together, like just going on intuition.
Yeah, just go.
And then those dishes where I obsessed over this grilled avocado for like 3 months, and every interpretation of it was such shit that I finally just abandoned it. Like Matthew, my brother's like, dude, it's not working, man. Just fucking move on.
Yeah.
But like the dish that I created yesterday during service because a vegan came in, like that's on the menu now.
Right.
Like something so fucking stupid.
Yep.
That everybody's like, this is amazing. You're like, yeah, I did the same way.
I've also changed a lot of dishes that way. Like, oh man, we got a vegan coming in, so instead of bonito, we're gonna like cure and smoke eggplant the same way and use it, and then
or banana skins or something.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
Oh, this actually tastes better than with the bonito, so the dish becomes vegetarian.
Right. You've been at Catbird for 2 years.
Yeah.
So, what's next, man? Not saying you're going to leave tomorrow or whatever, but what's your 5-year plan, man? You want to stay in Nashville? You want to keep traveling?
I want to stay in Nashville. I got the 2 kids. I got a 1.5-year-old as well. My wife and I bought a house down in Spring Hill.
Oh, amazing. Good. Did you get in before the fucking market became what it is now?
Yeah, thankfully.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
Thankfully. Yeah, I mean, I think the next goal will be trying to, open something and figuring out that whole process, when I finally leave.
Yeah. Any idea what that is?
I have some ideas. It'll definitely be like growing up in Florida, just constantly like inspired by seafood. So I know, like I've been wanting to open a seafood restaurant since, I moved. Well, man, when I moved here in 2013, there were no real seafood restaurants, right? So,
this is a tough town for seafood, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. For a chef and for the diner too, because they're not exposed to it. So whatever seafood they've been eating probably hasn't been good quality, and the way they grew up, kind of like not eating seafood in the things you read in the paper, like if you're landlocked, don't eat seafood.
Yeah, well,
it's a conditioning.
Say, like, this is a landlocked state, like why aren't we eating cattle? And it's like, well, believe it or not, back in like 1913 or something, maybe it was their late 1800s, early 1900s. This guy created a vehicle and it could drive. Well, then like 10 years later, these 2 brothers created a vehicle that could go in the air.
Right.
It's incredible.
Fast forward present day.
We also have trains.
Wait, I could FedEx something overnight.
Yeah. So I get nicer seafood from Japan than I can get from
100%. Yeah.
From Alabama.
Totally.
Which is messed up because 6 hours away.
Yeah.
You think, but I don't know. There's like a certain respect that they show for ingredients over there. Obviously, that.
Yeah. Right. It's a different world over there.
But we've had a lot of people come in that don't like things, and I don't usually accommodate likes or dislikes. Mm-hmm. If you have an allergy, we'll accommodate it if we can.
Right.
But like we'll serve something like, oh, I don't really like this. I'm like, well, try it. If you don't like it, I'll make you something else. And then it's like, oh, I've never liked this before. I like it.
And now I like it. Right. Well, just fucking try
maybe
something.
Didn't have it.
Right.
You had shrimp at Bubba Gump's.
Red Lobster. Right.
Yeah. That's why.
Right.
So
I think. I don't know if I think. I would like to believe, and I hope, that there is a shift happening in the restaurant industry of. We're really moving away from the customer's always right. Mm-hmm. I don't know who started that, probably back in the 80s, where it was Let Us Entertain You or Danny Meyer or one of those restaurateurs, like the customer's always right. And that worked for a while. Mm-hmm. But in this post-pandemic Karen age that we live in, the supply chain issue, the staffing issue, it's like, this is what we got.
Right.
And I've been saying for a couple of years now, I guess since the pandemic, like you're going to see smaller restaurants, tighter menus, smaller staff, places being only open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or 3 days a week. I don't know how they do it. I can't figure out how Peninsula and Locust do it.
Yeah, I don't know.
I ran the numbers from just being there, and it doesn't make it. But whatever, they're doing it and they're making it happen. But I feel like the menu of this is what we have, and it's not that we're not accommodating. It's like this is not the place for you. If you hand me a card that says you can't have all this stuff, I am not going to stop this business, this machine, from serving 50, 60 other people just to accommodate you that you walked in. Like if somebody calls and says, I think I was at Dicey's, the pizzeria in Wedgwood, Houston. If you haven't been there, it's fucking delicious, man. Okay. And on their menu, literally says, we cannot accommodate substitutions. You can take away anything you want, but you can't add anything.
Right.
And I was like, that's a very clever way of saying, like, it's not no substitutions, fuck you, or we don't do this, fuck you. It's kind of, hey, take away anything you want, you can't add anything, which, okay. And I'd like to see, or I hope that the diner is going to get re-educated in this post-pandemic world of, this is not my restaurant just doing this. This is the situation the world is in.
Right.
And unfortunately, for all of us in this restaurant right now, this is what we have. And I know that you want a boneless, skinless, grilled chicken breast, but I don't have a fucking grill.
Also,
I don't have a grill.
Right. If there's places there's places for that.
Right.
There's 4 of us in the kitchen. That's it.
Right. I equate it to, and not to pick on vegans. I'm really not picking on vegans, but vegans will walk into any fucking restaurant and say, I'm a vegan, make me something. If you and I walked into a vegan restaurant and said, you know what, I just want a steak.
Yeah.
Like, why? It's such a double standard.
That's a good point.
Why can't I walk into a vegan restaurant and be like, I'm a vegan, I'm a meat eater, and I just don't see anything. Like, can you make me a pork chop?
Yeah.
Like, they would fucking kill you and
Does
throw you out.
Wild Cow, do they serve? Wild Cow's vegetarian, right?
Well,
you got cows, don't you?
Cow is vegetarian. Can I, you know? I think that's a crazy double standard that, for whatever reason, it's not. If you're a vegan and you walk into a steakhouse, what do you want us to do? There's places you can go. And you want to be as accommodating to people as possible. And I'm not saying say fuck you to everybody, but I'm saying, like, in this world where supply chain issues a thing, we don't have staff, we're down 4 fucking people. I can't stop the whole service while I scrounge around trying to make you a broccoli dish because that's what you want.
Right.
And we're still being hospitable. I don't want to be non-hospitable because we're in the hospitality industry. And for me, it's like, that's number one. Number one is taking care of your staff first, especially in the post-pandemic. Make sure everybody's mentally healthy, making sure they're getting their days off, making sure they're doing what they need to be doing. Number 2 is being hospitable to the guests coming in. And that has limitations on it now, I think, Yeah. What do you think?
I agree. I think somehow in the last few years, everybody's become, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, not selfish, but like everything's about you.
Right.
I mean,
entitled.
It's all about me. Entitled. Yeah. Exactly. It's like Mike Tyson said, like, people are really entitled on, say whatever they want on, on the internet. Shit out of that guy. But like, you say something to his face, and, obviously restaurants are like that, but the thing is, everybody's become like, well, this is how, like, it should be. So when you say, like, onions upset my stomach, and I can't even have them in sauces or broths, it's like, well, if we use shallots in every single sauce, I can't make, especially if it's if something that has to go in a blender or something, like, it's not fair to me or to you to give you a product that is not at the standard that I think it should be served at for the price point that you're paying, because you think onions upset your stomach.
Right. Correct.
Or whatever, you know what I mean? So we don't do vegans anymore because it's just, it's too much. Right. If somebody has a dairy allergy but they can't have butter, I tell them we can't do it. Because like it's just not, it's not giving you the experience, and there's somebody else on the wait list that wants that experience.
Correct.
That'll pay for it. That will enjoy it.
Correct.
That doesn't, like, maybe that's not fair, but there's also, we can point you in the direction of other restaurants that are capable of taking care of those accommodations, So that's also the kind of but like people are so entitled, they get so offended, and you don't understand the work that goes into this stuff. I think that's, I thought maybe with people seeing it on television, more shows, that you would realize like, well, these guys do work hard. It does take a ton just to create this one thing for someone. But I want them to change it for me because...
I think you're right. I'm glad that you brought that up. I think you're right. I think the TV, Top Chef, Food Network did a lot for the industry, and I think it hurt the industry a lot. And it was really funny as I was talking to a veterinarian friend of mine years ago, and Steve Irwin, the crocodile guy, he came up. And she goes, Steve Irwin did so much for our industry, and he hurt it the same way that the Top Chef did, this and that. Like, everything's a cooking competition. I remember my mom called me out of the blue one time, and she goes, hey, how's it going, blah, blah, blah. She's like, who's Joe Robuchon? I'm like, what the fuck are you watching? How do you know that name? He's like, oh, he's on Top Chef and blah, blah, blah. So in that aspect, like, it really helped prepare the world, the masses, to see like, these are these guys, this is what it takes to do this. A little bit skewed because it's a competition show and they know the winner even before they start, filming the seasons and stuff. But it did a lot to educate, but it also did a lot to hurt of, people coming in, wanting that drama or wanting that thrill. And especially at a place like Catbird where they think it's a TV show, or the people that would heckle me during, hey, chef, come here. Hey, you gotta do this. Like, dude, I'm fucking working. Yeah. What do you do? I'm an accountant. Cooking. I'm an accountant. Do I go to fucking your accounting office and fucking heckle you about numbers? Like, leave me the fuck alone, man. I mean, I couldn't say that, but that's what's going on in my mind.
Yeah.
So that's great that I think it's an entitlement, but I think in this post-pandemic era with the Karen movement, I don't even know what to call it anymore. It's like, get the fuck out of here. That's it. Get the fuck out, man. So what do you see at Catbird? Like, when you say no to people, how do they take it?
Oh, a lot of people don't like it.
And is it you saying no through an email weeks before they come, or they're on the spot and they didn't tell you? Like,
so on the website, on the spot, especially for like a shellfish allergy or something, like, we got 4 shellfish dishes on the menu. Totally. You didn't say anything like we could have killed you.
Yeah.
And you don't think it's a big deal.
Right.
I said, which one you got the email?
There's nothing I can do to help you.
There's literally, when you book, it says, do not book if you have a restriction without calling ahead of time.
Right, correct.
Which
you have to click on and close out.
Right.
Like,
when you book, it asks you what your restrictions are. And then our hostess calls you, or our maitre d' calls you and asks what the restrictions are.
Yes.
So you literally 3 times and people won't respond. Right. So if they show up and it's like, obviously we'll scramble to do it, but it's like, it's not.
It sucks.
It's not right.
Right.
And then you're a shitty person for the rest of the service that nobody wants to deal with.
Right. Correct.
So
you've made it weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so we do 18 courses on the second turn and only 13 on the first, and we don't accommodate allergies. We say we don't accommodate allergies on the second turn, but obviously it's like a weekly thing. Like, if it's something like, all right, there's not much of this on the menu, we can accommodate.
Yeah.
But I don't have like a vegetarian option for a dish on the second turn, because like, if I'm bringing in, hairy crab, I don't want to substitute something for hairy crab because it's about this ingredient.
Totally.
So.
That's such a specialized restaurant. Like, you just don't have things laying around, man.
Right.
It's a lot easier at like a huge restaurant somewhere else that does 500 covers. Like, okay, there's extra bodies that can throw something together and just go in the cooler. But like, for you, it's like, we ordered exactly what we need for the exact amount of covers that we're doing. Like, exactly. I can't, what I think people don't understand is like, I can't make you something.
And there's not space for you to have space. Just a bunch of stuff.
And I would have to like remove myself from this situation then what am I going to do?
Yeah. I'm already picking up 5 dishes. You want me to step away? Then, you're not making your turns. Everybody sits late. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it kind of coincides with the younger generation of cooks coming in too. It's like, there's certain things that need to change, and you want to be accommodating, and you want to, you don't want it. I want people to enjoy coming to work, because when you enjoy coming to work, you're passionate, you're having fun. I think it's just a better experience for everyone. If there's one negative person or one person that's in a bad mood, in that small of an environment,
especially at that place,
you can
man.
feel
It's
the
fucked up.
energy.
Yes.
That's like the energy vampire,
Yes.
just sucking it out of the room.
Yeah. With the staff is super dangerous
Yep.
in that small 1,000 square foot room because weeks could go by and then it's a cancer. It spreads. Also, what I saw a lot was there's two types of people that dine at that restaurant. There's the people that try to get the reservation, they follow the chefs, they get the reservation first, then they book their travel, and then they book at the other places, then they turn Nashville into a trip. But they're getting the reservation there first, and then they're booking the rest of it. And then there's the other people that are, we're just in Nashville and someone told us to go here.
Right.
And you see when they walk in, the diners walk in and they know the drill, they know what's going on, they're pumped to be there, they're excited to see you, they're excited to talk to you, and then you get that foretop that comes in. We've been on Broadway all night, and they're fucking trash, and you're just like, oh, this is going to be a hard
They all want to do
service.
the pairing and start with the cocktail.
We're going to start with this. You serve them the dish. No one's paying attention. No one's listening.
Yep.
They eat half of it. And like, what was this? This was crap. Oh, I'm allergic to crab. Well, you ate half of it. I just explained it to you.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on in this corner here?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
Like, those are the
100%.
two types of diners that go to those types of restaurants, man.
Head on. Yeah. Exactly.
It's
so
terrible.
True.
You ever have to bounce anybody out of there?
I have once.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a whole bunch of stories. Man.
Yeah. I mean, I was so pissed off. I couldn't plate. I had to have my sous chef plate because I was like, like, like shaking so bad.
Yeah.
This dude, like, just, like, we had reopened. It was in January, actually. And shipping issues. Like, we had some nice dry-aged booty coming from Leeway, the dry-aged fish guy.
Oh, sick. Yeah, excellent, man.
But it got held up because of snow in Indianapolis or something. So I had to bring an amberjack from Evans or something.
Yeah.
And it wasn't bad fish. It was fresh. Like, it just got there that day. And this guy just kept saying, like, this is the worst amberjack I've ever had, blah, blah. And they were toasted when they got there.
Yeah, of course.
He's from Texas, like, super redneck, and just kept making comments, like, all night. And then we were dropping it to the second seating. So we split it into, like, a 5:30 and a 6. So we're dropping it to the 6, and he's like, don't eat that one, blah, blah, blah.
Oh,
so I walked over and I said, how about the next time we plate this course, you come back here, cook, I'll sit down and be the asshole, and then we'll see how you like it. Yeah. And he's like, oh, no, man. Like, some nights you have bad nights, some you have... I said, no. I said, if you keep going on, I'm going to cut you off, and you'll be done.
Yeah.
And then, like, he got really weird, and his wife asked for the check, and they left.
Yeah.
And then, like, everybody clapped and cheered when he left, because he was being obnoxious.
That happened to
but
us
it's like,
one time,
I didn't
too.
want to have to do that. But, like, like, you could say one thing. You say you don't like a dish, that's fine.
No problem,
You say it 10
Let's move on.
times.
Right. You're telling other people not
And
to
you're
eat it.
speaking out, you're
that
ruining
just
the
got here.
people on both sides of you, like, their experience.
Yeah, man. My brother Matthew would always be the enforcer.
That's nice.
Like, anytime something happened, anytime someone was being loud, we would shoot each other eyes, and I'd be like, nah, not yet. And they'd do it again, and I'd be like, yeah, and he'd go over there and be like, blah, blah, blah. And there were a lot of times where I just removed myself from the service and went on the back patio into the panic room and just screamed in pillows.
Yeah.
And then I came back like, okay, like it's...
Did he have the mustache at the time? Or?
Yeah, of course he did.
Yeah, that's
man.
the
Freddie
enforcer
Mercury.
mustache.
Everybody called him Freddie Mercury. Like, you're getting bounced out of a fine dining restaurant by a Freddie Mercury lookalike, dude.
Yeah.
This is rock bottom for you, man.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
You got any travel plans coming up? Anywhere you're thinking about going? What does work-life balance look like to you? I know it's like 6 questions.
Well, with the 2 kids, if I can get 5 hours of sleep, that's a good night.
Tough.
So it like reverts you back to the party years where you're like, oh, I've done this before.
Right.
But it's harder now because you're not wanting to stay stay up late or wake up early. It's just my daughter likes to wake up earlier than she should. But my wife lets me get a little sleep on Sundays, and I try to be home Sunday, Monday. The kids are at daycare, so like Monday evening, and then I try to have shorter days on Tuesdays so I can be home for family time.
Like on Sundays, are you just a complete zombie? Like that?
Well, if I can get decent sleep, my wife knows if I don't have coffee and I don't eat, I won't be happy.
Yeah.
And during football season, like depending on how the Bucks go, like I might not be happy for like an hour or so afterwards.
But I feel like Catbird was such a draining restaurant physically, and it was such a draining mental dump too, because you're putting on a show every night. You got to talk, you got to this, and then Sunday mornings would come, and I sometimes I couldn't even get out of bed.
Oh yeah, you just don't want to wake up.
Yeah.
So
I can't physically talk anymore. Yeah. Yeah.
But there are nights where you just don't want to talk to anybody, you know. But you have to.
You have to, yeah.
But yeah, Sundays I kind of am able to reset. Like I was dragging today. I already had 4 shots of espresso, and now I'm 3/4 into this cold brew. But you know, in the mornings I'll usually rip a scoop of pre-workout, which has like 400 milligrams of caffeine, just to get me going.
You can feel it in your veins.
Yeah,
right.
It also forces me, like, if I'm like have beta alanine in it and I'm itching, like you don't want to just go to work like that. You look like a crackhead. So like I'll just go. I have like force myself to work out, and I feel
what's your
so
workout?
much more energized.
Yeah, what's your workout?
It's just it changes, but it's like right now it's a hypertrophy phase, but ideally I'd like to be in the gym 5-6 days a week. Realistically, right now it's like 3. You know, so
3's still a lot.
Yeah, it's
for the
better
hours
than
that
nothing.
you work. 3's pretty good.
Yeah, and it's everything's quick. I try to superset it and try to have 30 minutes or less pretty much to get it done, so I can get to work and get done what I need to. But you know, travel wise, I have places I'd like to travel. You know, when I eventually leave Catbird, but none of that's booked. The only vacation we have planned is we're gonna go. I'm gonna take the kids to Disney on Christmas this year because like my daughter, she'll be almost 2. My son, you know, he'll be almost 4, and I feel like this is a good age to take them to Magic Kingdom for Christmas Day, where it's like when he's a little bit older, he knows there's presents downstairs. Yeah, he gets it, but he doesn't quite get it now. For like, hey, like we'll put the presents out when we get back from Disney.
Totally.
Like
they're not gonna know.
Yeah, he's like,
you can just tell him.
He's just stoked he gets to see like Mickey and Minnie on Christmas morning. You know,
you could tell him this is Christmas morning. Could be January, July, and they're not gonna know.
He's not gonna know. He just knows there's presents under the tree.
Right.
Yeah, the tree's probably still up from last year, anyways.
Where you been eating lately? Any good meals in Nashville?
Oh well, you know, with the 2 kids, I don't get out much.
Oh, no kidding, huh?
I've eaten at Locust more than any place except Martin's Barbecue. I eat at Martin's like once a week or every other week.
So good, man. Yeah.
I get like, since I try to count my calories, well, it depends. Some days I'll just blow it all out at Martin's and then like have popcorn for dinner. Yeah. And then other days I'll get like a pound of turkey and eat it for like 2 or 3 days, and then get like a barbecue sandwich. And the wings are my favorite.
Yeah.
But yeah, Locust is incredible. Trying to think where else I finally got to eat at Peninsula on like a normal night.
Great. Those guys are great, man.
So I ate there. He did like a special thing on a Monday. I went, and then a couple weeks ago I got to go on a Friday, which was awesome. So I have, you know, since they've been open, that's the first time I've ever been able to eat there because they're never open.
They're
the
always
same night.
Dude, it's so weird hours, man.
Yeah,
how they do it. Like,
I'm trying to. I mean, that's kind of like. Literally, like Martin's, I should have like a membership. There's one by my house in Spring Hill, and I'm there. Sometimes I'll be there like Sunday and Monday. It just depends.
Just get a punch card.
Yeah.
Right on.
Wish they had a discount card.
What's your diet looking like?
So I've actually for like the last over a year been able to kind of consistently keep losing weight. I eat
you intermittent fast
20,
or anything?
No, I just eat 20 calories a day. 200 carbs, 92 fat. I can't remember the protein. It's all locked into my FitnessPal. I've been doing it for so long now. I just like know what to look at on my FitnessPal. But 198 protein. So, you know, I change it up every day with like what I'm eating and stuff. But I've been consistent with that. Yeah. And then every once in a while, like if I go to New York for a weekend or something, I'll blow out a day.
That's different, right? But, yeah.
I just like I know like maybe it'll set me back a couple pounds, but you start to see like through this program like how much stress or lack of sleep or different things like that, like your weight fluctuate and you
the sleep for me is the biggest.
It's crazy.
Man. It's the biggest thing I learned when I stopped drinking, and then during the pandemic, it was the most important thing. There was a rough patch that I went through in July of. I was going to bed at like 8:30 in the morning, and then I was living alone and I was isolated. Even though I was on like the group text with my friends and stuff, it was still I have a 4-bedroom house. I lived alone. I was wandering the house, and then I'd go to sleep at like, 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be like an insomniac.
Yeah,
and it was rough. And then I finally I started working out at one of the gyms, Shed, shout out to Sam Butts in East Nashville, that opened up. So I started like working out a little bit, and then I was doing a lot of yoga because things started to open up a little bit. I got my sleep schedule under control. And then I turned my house into like this underground dinner pop-up restaurant. So it gave me purpose. And I had no idea how important a routine was. You know, for the longest time, I just wake up and it'd be like, get on the phone, dishwasher called in sick, and you just start like feeling. I never carved out like an hour or an hour and a half of the morning of my day to like wake up, not be on the phone, grab a coffee, sit outside, and just kind of like, this is my routine. And then I would go do yoga, jiu-jitsu, workout. Like now I have like a set routine, and it's like I have to live and die by that.
Right.
And I'm the same way. If something is off, I miss a day, or I don't eat right, I start putting on weight. I start getting grumpy.
You feel hungover.
I feel hungover. The shifts, and then once you get in that spiral, then it's hard to like catch up. And all of a sudden now it's like, dude, I slept 4 hours yesterday, and I've been eating cookies. Like, it's so weird. Like from dieting, it's so easy to like fall out, but it's hard to get back into it. Right.
Yeah, the routine's important, especially if you start working out. Like, if you can get through those first 2 weeks, it becomes like you look forward to it.
Yes, no
but
problem.
You got to get through the first 2 weeks. Right. That's the hard part. Even for me, like being only 3 days a week, it's hard.
Right on. Well, Baxter, it's great talking to you, man.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a pleasure having you back in Nashville. It's a pleasure sharing memes with you every night.
Oh, yeah.
And thanks for doing this, and thanks for hanging out with us. Like I said, I think you have a really interesting story, and I think we captured it here. So I appreciate it, man. Appreciate your friendship.
Cool. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, same.